In the far reaches of the galaxy, a powerful race known as the Zephyrians had expanded their empire, enslaving countless species in their quest for dominance. Humanity, despite their resilience, was no exception. The Earth, once a beacon of independence and freedom, now stood under the heavy yoke of Zephyrian rule. Cities had crumbled, governments had fallen, and a once vibrant civilization had been reduced to little more than a memory. Elliot Braxton, a man in his mid-30s with a rugged face and unyielding spirit, stood in the middle of what was once the bustling metropolis of New York City. Now, it was little more than rubble and debris, with towering Zephyrian ships looming overhead like ominous shadows. He watched as his fellow humans were forced into labor camps, their spirits broken, their bodies weak from years of servitude. But Elliot's spirit had never wavered. "Today's the day," he whispered under his breath. His hand tightened around the small communicator in his pocket. The Resistance, a collection of ragtag survivors and rebels, had been preparing for this moment for months. Elliot was their leader, not because he was the strongest or the smartest, but because he refused to break under the weight of their oppressors. Hidden deep within the mountains, in a concealed bunker, the Resistance's base was alive with activity. Kaylee, the tech expert, sat hunched over a console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. She was young, no older than 25, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. "Elliot," her voice came through the communicator, "the Zephyrians are shifting their patrols. We have a window, but it's small." "I'll be there," Elliot replied, already on the move. As Elliot slipped through the shadows of the city, avoiding the robotic enforcers of the Zephyrians, his thoughts drifted to the people he had lost. His wife, his brother, his friends. They had all fought, they had all resisted, and they had all been crushed. But that was why this time things had to be different. They had learned, they had adapted, and now they would strike. In the bunker, Kaylee's face was lit up by the screen in front of her. The Zephyrian outposts around the city were marked in red, but the Resistance's points of attack were marked in green. One by one, the green dots began to move. Elliot had organized small, highly coordinated groups of rebels to strike simultaneously across multiple locations, spreading the Zephyrians thin and creating chaos. "Is everyone in position?" Elliot asked, entering the command room. Kaylee nodded. "Just waiting on your signal." Next to Kaylee stood Silas Drake, a former military strategist and one of the few people with experience in actual combat before the invasion. His eyes were cold, calculating, as he stared at the map. "We hit hard, we hit fast. They won't know what hit them." Elliot walked over to the table, where the plans were laid out. "This isn't just about blowing things up. We're sending a message. The Zephyrians think they've crushed us, but they haven't. We're still here, and we'll fight until the last breath." Silas smirked. "That's the spirit." Elliot glanced around the room. His team was small but determined. Kaylee with her tech skills, Silas with his military knowledge, and Ethan, their weapons expert, who had once been a simple engineer before the invasion. Each had their own reasons for fighting, but together they were unstoppable. "All right," Elliot said, gripping the edge of the table. "Let's light the spark." Moments later, explosions echoed through the city. The Zephyrian enforcers, taken by surprise, scrambled to respond. Elliot and his team moved swiftly, taking out key targets and reclaiming vital resources. The Resistance had made its first major move, and for the first time in years, the Zephyrians were on the defensive. As the dust settled, Elliot stood on the roof of a ruined building, looking down at the chaos they had unleashed. Fires raged in the distance, smoke rising into the sky like a signal to the rest of humanity. The people had seen the explosions, they had heard the gunfire, and slowly they were beginning to rise. "This is just the beginning," Silas said, stepping up beside him. Elliot nodded. "But we've made them bleed. That's what matters." From below, Kaylee's voice crackled through the communicator. "Elliot, we're picking up heavy movement. The Zephyrians are mobilizing. They're not going to take this lying down." Elliot expected as much. The Zephyrians had ruled through fear and power for too long to allow a small rebellion to go unchecked. But that was the plan. Draw them out, make them overextend, and then strike where it hurt the most. "We stick to the plan," Elliot said, turning to Silas. "They'll be expecting us to retreat, to go back into hiding. But we're not hiding anymore. We hit their supply lines, sabotage their communications. We make it impossible for them to respond." Silas grinned. "You've got it. I'll get the teams ready." As the sun set, casting a red hue over the horizon, Elliot took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, there was hope. It was a fragile thing, but it was enough. The resistance had lit the fire, and now it was spreading. The Zephyrians would not give up easily, but neither would humanity. Elliot and his team would fight, not just for their survival, but for the future of every man, woman, and child still under the oppressive weight of alien rule. Because humanity was unbroken, and they would remain so, no matter the cost. The resistance had become more than just whispers in the shadows. Over the weeks, their small victories had inspired uprisings across the planet. Zephyrian patrols found themselves ambushed in the streets, their outposts sabotaged, and their command centers under siege. For the first time since the invasion, humanity wasn't just surviving, they were fighting back. But Elliot knew the price of victory wasn't cheap. Deep underground in the heart of the old New York City ruins, the command center was a frenzy of activity. Kaylee hunched over her console, her fingers moving faster than ever. "They're making their move, Elliot," she said, her voice tense. "Zephyrian fleets are converging. They're preparing for a final assault." Elliot stood in the center of the room, his mind racing. "How long do we have?" Silas, standing beside him, grimly replied, "Hours, maybe less." The Zephyrians had learned from their defeats. This wasn't going to be a slow battle of attrition. It was going to be a single, crushing blow. Their motherships, colossal and terrifying, were descending from orbit, bringing with them the full might of the alien empire. It was clear. The Zephyrians were ready to end the rebellion once and for all. "Then we hit them first," Elliot said, his voice cold with determination. Silas raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about a suicide mission." "I'm talking about taking the fight to them," Elliot corrected. "We've been on the defensive for too long. If we can breach their command vessel, take out their leader, the rest will crumble." Kaylee looked up from her console. "You're serious, aren't you?" Elliot nodded. "We've got one shot at this. We take down their mothership. We take down their empire." The room fell silent as everyone processed the weight of Elliot's words. It was a plan filled with risk. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but the alternative was certain defeat. If they did nothing, the resistance would be wiped out. But if they succeeded, they could win the war. Silas finally spoke. "We've got enough explosives to make a dent, but we'll need to get past their defenses. That's not going to be easy." Elliot's jaw tightened. "We'll make it work. Kaylee, I need you to hack into their systems, create a distraction. Silas, get our best fighters. We're going up there." The Zephyrian command center hummed with cold efficiency. High Commander Areitha, a tall, regal figure with piercing silver eyes, stood at the heart of the control room, watching as holographic displays tracked the movements of the resistance forces below. "These humans," Aretha mused, her voice dripping with disdain. "So persistent, so misguided." Her second-in-command, a brutish Zephyrian officer named Lorik, nodded. "They're nothing but vermin, High Commander. This final strike will rid us of their nuisance." Areitha's lips curled into a smile. "Yes. Let them make their last stand. Soon, the Earth will be ours." But as the commander turned to give the order, alarms blared across the ship. Areitha's eyes narrowed. "What's happening?" One of the Zephyrian operators frantically scanned his controls. "We're detecting an unauthorized breach in Sector 7. Humans." Elliot, Silas, and a handful of elite fighters stormed through the corridors of the Zephyrian mothership. The explosives strapped to their chests were their last hope. They moved with precision, their training and preparation kicking in. Kaylee's hacking had worked. Most of the ship's security systems had been rerouted, giving them just enough time to make their way toward the core. "Move fast," Elliot urged, sweat pouring down his brow. The corridors shook as the ship's automated defenses kicked in, but they pressed forward, blasting their way through alien guards who tried to intercept them. They reached the ship's main reactor, a towering structure that pulsed with energy. Silas quickly got to work, planting the explosives at key points. "This will do it," Silas said, a smirk playing on his lips. "We blow this, the whole ship goes down." But just as the last charge was set, a squad of Zephyrian soldiers stormed the room. Laser blasts whizzed through the air as the two sides clashed in brutal combat. Elliot fought with everything he had, but the Zephyrians were relentless. Elliot's vision blurred as pain shot through his side. A Zephyrian weapon had grazed him. He gritted his teeth and kept fighting, knowing this was the only chance humanity had. Around him, the resistance fighters fell one by one, but they fought on, never backing down. "We're not going to make it out of here," Silas said through gritted teeth, blasting another Zephyrian. Elliot knew he was right. "Then we make sure it counts." With a final surge of strength, Elliot activated the detonator. The charges planted around the reactor began to glow with ominous light. Alarms blared across the mothership. The Zephyrians, realizing what was happening, fell into a panic, but it was too late. Elliot and Silas exchanged a grim look. This was it. From the surface of the Earth, the survivors of the Resistance watched in awe as the sky lit up with fire. The Zephyrian mothership, the very symbol of their domination, exploded in a brilliant burst of light, fragments of the once imposing vessel raining down like falling stars. In that moment, the Zephyrian fleet faltered. Without their leader, without their command, the invaders hesitated, and the Resistance seized the opportunity. Across the globe, humanity rose up, striking back with a fury that had been building for years. The Zephyrians, so confident in their superiority, had never expected this. They had underestimated the human will to survive, to fight for their freedom. And now, their empire was crumbling. Back on the surface, Kaylee stood beside the makeshift resistance camp, staring up at the fiery remains of the Zephyrian mothership. She knew what it meant. Elliot, Silas, and the others hadn't made it back. But they had won. "They did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Humanity had endured. Against all odds, against an empire that sought to enslave them, they had fought back. And now they were free. The will of the unbroken had prevailed. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.